Monday, Detective David Mills, eager and ambitious, has just joined the seasoned Detective William Somerset, who's just a week away from retirement. Their first case together has a rocky start, with the pair clashing in styles. Somerset's meticulous nature grates on the restless Mills, who is itching for action and respect. As they arrive at a grim crime scene, they find an obese man dead at a table, slumped in what initially appears to be a tragic accident. But as they inspect closer, the detectives notice the man's limbs are bound with barbed wire, confirming a grim suspicion. This is no ordinary death. Somerset studies the details of the scene carefully, observing every angle in his deliberate way. Annoyed by Mills' constant chatter, he instructs the younger detective to interview neighbors, implying his patience is wearing thin. Frustrated, Mills feels dismissed, craving acknowledgement. Later, during their drive back, Mills vents about how Somerset had him relegated to door-knocking, feeling sidelined. But the autopsy report soon shifts their focus, revealing a horrifying truth. The man was force-fed until his stomach ruptured after a brutal kick from the killer. Somerset grimly notes that the killer took 12 hours to complete this torture. To him, this ritualistic attention to detail points to a higher purpose, a message. The captain, however, isn't convinced, dismissing Somerset's theory as unnecessary speculation and believes this was merely a deranged act targeting the victim for his obesity. Somerset sees otherwise. He suspects this is the start of something darker and feels an overwhelming dread. He worries this case is too much for Mills, who takes the comment as an insult, feeling yet again that he isn't seen as capable. Tuesday, the day starts with a second horrific murder. Reporters swarm the building where a famous defense attorney lies dead, with greed smeared in blood on the carpet. Mills walks into the chaotic scene, still reeling from the captain's decision to reassign him, while Somerset's name is already being erased from his office door. But as the captain briefs Somerset on the new murder, he tries to convince him to stay on the case. Somerset's expertise is invaluable, especially as the forensic team uncovers small plastic pieces inside the stomach of the obese man, hinting at the killer's intentions. Somerset returns to the first crime scene, driven by a nagging feeling. Searching deeper, he traces the origin of the plastic pieces and notices the refrigerator is out of place. Behind it, scrawled in grease, is the word gluttony, along with a message from the killer. Long is the way and hard that out of hell leads up to light. Somerset presents this to the captain, convinced it's only the beginning. With 7 deadly sins to account for, the seasoned detective knows there's a series of murders to come, each one planned to punish a different sin. But with just 5 days left before his retirement, he's reluctant to get involved. He does, however, delve into research, spending the night combing through library books on the 7 deadly sins. Meanwhile, Mills pores over crime scene photos with increasing determination. Somerset, with a mix of professional duty and guilt, leaves Mills a note in the morning with a list of clues to guide him. Wednesday, Mills, now operating out of Somerset's office, settles in for a long day of collaboration. A phone call from Mills' wife, Tracy, interrupts their work, inviting Somerset to dinner. That evening, the tension between Mills and Somerset melts into something resembling camaraderie as they discuss their very different perspectives on life and work. Tracy, noticing Somerset's solitude, questions why he's never married. Both men agree Somerset's unyielding personality might have something to do with it. The dinner takes a humorous turn when Somerset learns that the Mills' new apartment is perched right above the subway, causing regular vibrations that make it impossible to ignore. He chuckles at the irony, finding it amusing that even a detective could miss such a detail when renting an apartment. After dinner, talk veers back to the case. Mills shares a photograph of a set of scales with a pound of flesh on them, a grisly nod to the famous pound of flesh concept. This, along with a message from the killer, leaves them stumped as to how the killer evaded detection. Somerset notes that there's something they're missing, a key detail. When Mills points out that the attorney's wife's photograph has glasses drawn on it, Somerset believes this could be a significant clue. Either she saw something or might hold information about the killer's movements. They rush to interview her, and with her help, they notice that a painting in the attorney's office is hung upside down. Examining the painting, they initially find nothing amiss. Mills grows frustrated, believing they're being toyed with. But Somerset's persistence pays off as he discovers a series of fingerprints on the wall where the painting was hung. The lab's results reveal a chilling twist. The fingerprints form the words, "Help me." As they await identification on the fingerprints, Somerset and Mills retreat to the lobby for a brief respite, reflecting on the case's weight. Somerset, seeing his own dedication mirrored in Mills, senses that this case will not only define the remainder of his career but may also cast a long shadow on the younger detective's future, unfolding layers of crime and mind games. Every clue they uncover deepens the mystery, revealing the mind of a killer who crafts his murders with meticulous precision, fueled by a twisted philosophy. Somerset's instincts tell him these are more than mere killings. They are statements, delivered with grim purpose and chilling calculation. Each day inches them closer to the next gruesome act, with the killer one step ahead. Thursday, some progress. A fingerprint match has come in, but Somerset warns it's not their suspect. Their killer, he insists, isn't just mentally unstable. He's far more purposeful. With a SWAT team by their side, the detectives storm into the apartment linked to the prints. They find a horrifying sight. A man strapped to his bed, barely alive, representing the sin of sloth. When they examine photos taken by the killer, they realize he's been lying there, tortured, for an entire year. Even worse, he's still alive, barely clinging to life in unimaginable agony. Mills watches in disbelief as a news photographer quickly appears on the scene, snapping pictures. How did they get here so fast? He wonders. Somerset explains. News outlets pay for information on hot cases. Despite their discovery, they can't question the victim. His brain has turned to mush, and he's even chewed off his own tongue. According to the doctor, he's been in unimaginable pain until his arrival at the hospital. That night, Somerset receives a call from Tracy, who asks to meet. She feels isolated in the city and needs someone to talk to. The next morning, they meet at a diner, where Tracy confides her concerns about raising a child in such an unforgiving place. Somerset, though not the ideal person for parental advice, shares a story from his past and offers her heartfelt counsel. Back at the office, Mills grows restless, frustrated with sitting and waiting while a killer roams free. Somerset counters that this murderer isn't insane. Imagine the patience required, he says, to keep someone alive for a year just to orchestrate a perfect crime. Mills remains unconvinced, tossing out a joke about a library card, which sparks an idea for Somerset. The two head to the library, believing the killer must have studied the 7 deadly sins. Somerset jots down the titles of relevant books and slips some cash to an FBI contact to gain a list of readers. Mills bristles at the legality of it all, but they proceed. From the list, one name jumps out, John Doe. They soon find themselves at Doe's apartment door, unsure of what to expect. Just then, a man approaches carrying groceries, only to pull a gun and open fire. Chaos erupts as Mills and Somerset chase him through the building and onto the streets. During the pursuit, Doe gains the upper hand, knocking Mills to the ground and holding him at gunpoint. Mills mutters, "No," under his breath, and to his shock, Doe spares him, fleeing the scene. Back at Doe's door, Mills argues with Somerset about breaking in. Somerset warns him that they lack both a warrant and legitimate cause, but Mills's rage overrides caution. He kicks the door down, then pays a nearby woman to tell the officers she found Doe suspicious, hoping to cover their tracks. Inside Doe's dark, cluttered apartment, they find an unsettling collection of items. Somerset scans a shelf containing spaghetti cans, a severed hand in a glass case, and a portrait of a woman, while Mills discovers haunting photos of victims. As Somerset delves into the killer's chaotic diaries, Mills finds something even more chilling. The photographer who had appeared earlier on the sloth scene? That was their serial killer, John Doe. But there's another twist. The forensic team finds no usable fingerprints. As Somerset reads on, Mills grows increasingly agitated. Suddenly, Doe's phone rings. The detectives freeze as the killer himself speaks on the other end, expressing an eerie admiration for their tenacity. He even apologizes to Mills for injuring him during the chase. Doe ominously hints that he had to move up his plans and assures them a surprise is on the way. The next day, Saturday, they receive a tip from an S&M shop that had crafted a custom item for Doe. Before they can process this lead, a call comes in about another murder, the sin of lust. Rushing to the scene, they find a distraught man and the corpse of a blonde woman. Mills interviews the brothel owner while Somerset speaks with the shaken man found at the scene. Through panted breaths, the man reveals Doe forced him at gunpoint to commit the unspeakable act using a custom-made weapon. As the pieces fall into place, the detectives realize they are in a deadly game controlled by a calculated, merciless killer whose mind they're only beginning to comprehend. The detectives sit in a dimly lit bar, discussing the maddening challenge of catching an elusive killer. Their conversation turns philosophical as Somerset, an aging detective nearing retirement, reflects on a world where evil seems to flourish unchecked. It's easier to steal than to earn, easier to beat a child than raise them, he says with a resignation that underscores his decision to retire. But Mills, the young and idealistic partner, insists that he can't abandon his ideals, hoping to cling to the belief that justice still has a place in their world. Somerset returns home that night, unsettled by Mills' words, unable to shake the sense of duty his partner stirred in him. Sunday arrives, and they're summoned to the latest crime scene. Another gruesome chapter in a twisted sequence, the sin of pride. The victim, a woman, was given 2 unbearable choices: call for help and face life disfigured, or end her misery with pills. She chose the latter. The gravity of her decision lingers with Somerset and Mills as they leave, weighing heavy on their minds. This grim reality hangs over them as they return to the precinct, where an unexpected figure awaits. John Doe appears in the station, calm and composed, his clothes smeared in blood. He taunts the detectives with his eerie composure as Mills, consumed by rage, shouts at him to get on the ground. Doe is handcuffed and taken into custody, but his unnerving calm never falters. The detectives speculate about his motives. Why would he surrender now? They learn he has no fingerprints, no employment history, no financial records. Doe is an enigma, rich, educated, and devoid of any ties that could lead them to his identity. For once, Mills and Somerset are in total agreement. There's no logic to Doe's surrender unless he plans to complete his horrific masterpiece. Through his lawyer, Doe makes an unusual offer. There are 2 more bodies yet to be discovered, he claims, and he will lead the detectives to them, but only if they personally accompany him. Otherwise, he will plead insanity, avoiding conviction. Left with no choice, the detectives agree to follow Doe's lead. Dressed in protective gear and wired, the detectives depart, with helicopters escorting them. The car ride is tense as Somerset attempts to pry some meaning from Doe's twisted mind. But Doe dismisses these efforts, describing his motives as irrelevant. Mills, increasingly agitated, questions whether Doe is leading them into another trap. Unfazed, Doe hints that Mills will soon see the full purpose of his work. As they near their destination, Doe's rhetoric grows darker. He takes pleasure in turning each sin against the sinner, condemning society's apathy toward vice. Mills argues the victim's innocence, but Doe counters that people willingly indulge in sin, ignoring its consequences. Doe becomes visibly agitated, his calm facade cracking for the first time. Mills sees Doe as a madman, but Doe insists he's here to set an example, to force people to confront their sins. Then, Doe reveals something chilling. He could have eluded capture, but chose not to. Mills's presence, he says, is only due to Doe's mercy, a fact he wants Mills to remember for as long as he lives. They reach a desolate field beneath high-voltage towers, where Doe claims they'll find the next body. The helicopters, unable to navigate the power lines, are forced to halt their surveillance. Mills escorts Doe from the car, handcuffed and compliant, as they walk into the field. At precisely 7 p.m., a van appears in the distance. Somerset intercepts it, finding a delivery driver with a package labeled for Detective Mills. Somerset opens it cautiously, recoiling in horror at its contents. Meanwhile, Doe turns to Mills, speaking with a sinister admiration for his simple life and pretty wife, Tracy. Mills's confusion mounts as Doe reveals he visited Tracy that morning. When his attempt to play husband failed, he took a souvenir. Somerset, running toward them, shouts for Mills to throw down his weapon. Doe, sensing Mills's turmoil, admits he envies Mills's life, confessing that his own sin is envy. Mills's disbelief slowly gives way to rage as Doe details his wife's final moments, revealing she was pregnant, a fact Mills never knew. Somerset begs Mills to drop the gun, warning that this is exactly what Doe wants. But Doe taunts him further, describing Tracy's desperate pleas to save her unborn child. Mills's restraint shatters, his grief and anger boiling over. In a moment of blind rage, he pulls the trigger, shooting Doe repeatedly, fulfilling Doe's design by becoming the embodiment of wrath. Mills sits numbly in the back of a police car, shattered. Somerset's captain assures him Mills will be taken care of, but Somerset, equally haunted, reflects on a quote from Hemingway. "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." After a pause, Somerset agrees, though only with the second part. And that's the chilling finale of Say 7 on, a story where every twist tightens the noose and every sin unveils a darker truth. If this intense unraveling of sins had you on edge, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to Movies Unboxed.